everyone, it's Lorie Brown from allnurses.com, Ask Your Nurse Attorney, and I am here today to talk to you about Radonda Vaught. Unless you've been under a rock these days, you would know about the nurse from Tennessee who made a terrible, tragic med error. She was working at Vanderbilt Hospital and was the help nurse and kind of was a relief nurse, and she was actually had a new orientee with her that particular day. And she was called down to interventional radiology. There was a patient who was undergoing a PET scan who was afraid and claustrophobic. So the doctor ordered Versed. Now that's number one. Why didn't the facility have policies and procedures in place that when Versed is ordered that they have to be monitored? This woman who's unmonitored should not be given Versed and then put in a CAT scanner. That was the first issue. Radonda did go down there. She knew that Versed was ordered, and then she went to the Pyxis. Now, the order was entered into the system, but I guess hadn't made it to the Pyxis yet. She chose to override the Pyxis and put VE. The first VE that came up was vecuronium, so she overrode it. Vecuronium is a paralytic agent, and the patient was put into the PET scanner, was not monitored. And when she came out of the PET scanner, obviously she wasn't breathing and didn't have a heart rate. They resuscitated her, brought her to intensive care unit, but unfortunately by that time there was so much brain damage that the family chose to discontinue life support. It was a horrible, 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 tragic situation. Radonda was honest with her employers about what had happened, about the med error, and evidently Vanderbilt didn't tell the family what happened. They weren't honest. From what I hear, about a month later, she lost her job. A year later, criminal charges were filed against her. I looked at nurses.com. You can look up any nurse. Radonda does still have an active license, and in the news, they said that the Tennessee Board of Nursing investigated this matter and chose not to take her license, but is not practicing now, obviously because of the criminal matter. So can you imagine making a terrible mistake with a horrible outcome, and a year later the police come to your house and arrest you for reckless homicide? Well, that's exactly what happened. I am very concerned about this case and the precedent it might set. I don't believe that this amounts to reckless homicide. She was negligent. There is no question about it. She was negligent. But under Tennessee law, involuntary manslaughter is when a person causes the death of another human by his or her unlawful, reckless, or grossly negligent actions. It's the disregard for safety or risk of death that makes these actions criminal rather than the intent to harm the person. So yes, every day we give medications. If every med error was considered grossly negligent, then everybody would have criminal charges against them. The other issue that I have is that the chilling effect. Why would a nurse report a med error if it could result in sending her to prison? I think that's horrible. Right now we have a just culture. She should be allowed to take continuing ed, reminded of the 5 rights, and all the things that she didn't do properly. But unfortunately, now she's got to face criminal matter for just doing her job. Yes, she did it negligently, but this was a one-time isolated event. I heard that she's been practicing since 2015. So she was a relatively new nurse. And if you don't think this can happen to you, you are wrong. So in Tennessee, there's 3 categories of involuntary manslaughter, and that's where if you didn't mean to kill the person. The first is vehicular manslaughter. That's obviously killing somebody with a motor vehicle. The second is reckless homicide, and the third is criminally negligent homicide. Now, Radonda is charged with reckless homicide. Again, she's not convicted yet. A jury has not reviewed this, but she is charged with reckless homicide. And what this means is that the difference between reckless versus criminally negligent homicide is reckless homicide would be if you're playing Russian roulette, you pick up a gun with a single bullet in it and fire it at a friend. Obviously, that's reckless. There's no question about that. That would be reckless homicide. But if you fail to check the gun to see if there's a bullet in it, um, and you thought it was empty, and your knowledge and belief was that it was emptied, and you shot it, then that would be negligent homicide. So there's the difference between the reckless homicide and the negligent homicide. The reckless means that somebody have a disregard for the safety or risk of death. Now, Radonda was just doing her job. If Versed wasn't in the Pyxis, Versed, the order wasn't entered into it yet, and she'd still have to override the Pyxis. I think that prosecutors are hanging their hat on that she overrode safety mechanisms in the Pyxis. But again, to get Versed out, if the order wasn't entered into the computer yet, she would still have to override the Pyxis. So I think would be a chilling effect for nursing. I mean, what nurse would want to go to work or even become a nurse if they know they could be criminally responsible for something? One person in the All Nurses made the comment they wouldn't do that to physicians. Well, they actually have. There's Michael Jackson's physician gave propofol. Again, that was reckless because propofol is an extremely dangerous drug. It wasn't a mistake. He didn't mean to give propranolol and gave propofol. So he meant to give him the propofol. There are circumstances where a nurse can be criminally liable, but I don't think this is one of them. I think this is flat out malpractice. So let me show you and demonstrate to you how easy it is to make a med error. Okay, so I am going to show you a sentence, and at the top of the sentence it says how many F's are there. Now, don't count the F in that sentence, but I want you to count the F's in the rest of the sentence. So let me hold this up, and hopefully you can see this. So how many F's are in the sentence below? I'll give you a minute to look at it. And hopefully it's not backwards for you, but it may be. Okay, so how many of you got 3 F's? 4, 5, 6. Well, when I give this presentation, typically nurses will say anywhere between 3, 4, 5, and 6 F's, but we all know there's only one right answer. Well, typically nurses miss the ofs. There are actually 6 F's because of our brain translates into a V and we don't see the F's. So this is how easy it is to make a med error. She typed in VE, she got vecuronium, and again, she missed an F. It does not mean that she intentionally or negligently or recklessly tried. She was negligent, of course, but she didn't recklessly give the wrong medication. She did not practice the 5 rights. She was precepting somebody. That person didn't even notice it either. So there were a lot of situations that make this matter suspect. Why wasn't there in the Pyxis? Why didn't a pop-up come up? Are you sure you want this medication? This is a potent paralytic. Yes, it says it on the box, but why was anybody allowed to get this medication directly from the Pyxis? There were a lot of failures in this case. Why didn't the hospital tell the family that there was a med error and this is how the patient died? Why was it a year later after CMS investigates that the family learns the truth? But to throw the nurse under a bus for the system errors, that's where I have a problem. Every day, nurses do things that most of the public wouldn't do. And you can't pay people enough money to do what nurses do. It takes a very special person. I say that it's in your DNA for us to do the things that we do. We're exposed to every bodily fluid under the sun. Think about that nurse in Texas who got Ebola. We are exposed to everything. We clean up every bodily drainage under the sun, and we do it with a smile on our face and with care and compassion for our patients. Radonda in no way meant to make a medication error, but it's part of being human. I'll give you another example. Read this sentence. How many of you read I Love Paris in the Springtime? Well, that's not correct. It's I Love Paris in the springtime. Again, we miss the thes, we miss the f's. None of us intentionally try to make a mistake, but we're human. Our brain transcribes things, translates things. We go on autopilot. It is just a human condition. Now, that is why there's so many safety checks in the hospital. That's why 2 people need to verify the amount of insulin, because those numbers are so little, to make sure that the patient gets the right amount. Just to prevent any substance abuse or anything like that. That's why 2 nurses have to waste narcotics. It's a protection. So there are things in place, or things that should have been in place, to help the nurse. Why is vecuronium available and ready to be overridden in the Pyxis? Why doesn't a big things pop up, say warning? It should have been. In a lot of other institutions it is. But the real issue is, did this amount to reckless homicide? And I don't agree that it did. I think that, yes, flat out negligence, no question about it. Malpractice, no question about it. But putting her in jail is not going to bring this Charlene Murphy back. It's not. And her family says that they forgive the nurse, that Charlene would have forgiven the nurse, and wouldn't want her to have to go to jail over this. It is sad that we lost somebody. It is really sad. And it's sad about this med error, but it doesn't mean that she should go to jail. There are 100,000 unnecessary deaths each year in the hospital, and it doesn't mean it's malpractice. This in particular was. But what about all those other 100,000 deaths where things happen that shouldn't have happened, but they did, just because we're human? There's complications. Things happen. So I don't believe that she should be held liable and have prison hanging over her head. I think this was just a med error. She did not do the 5 rights, but every time a mistake is made, should not have prison holding over our head. Nurses should be able to be honest and ethical and report things like this, and not be afraid that if they do say something, they'll go to prison. So again, just my thoughts on the subject. I don't know what a jury is going to decide in this case. I know that there's some GoFundMes for her, raising money for attorney fees. Can you imagine? I mean, this is not covered by her malpractice insurance, if she had any. If you have a criminal matter, it's you that are paying the bill. And then when the prosecutor comes to you with a great offer and says, okay, well, if you plead guilty to this and don't have a problem for another year, well, it'll go away. It'll be off your record. Well, what would you do? Would you pay another $100,000 to go to trial to clear your name? Or would you take the deal and have it go away in a year? These would be issues that nurses are faced with if we have criminal matters hanging over our head. And it's unfair. And aside from that, what about the license? I mean, obviously the Tennessee Board of Nursing said that she's okay to practice and she still has an active license. So just food for thought for if you are thinking that she should be criminally prosecuted. I just want you to know this could be you. Easily could be you. Radonda in a million years never thought it would be her. And she is the one who has to wake up every morning or go to bed every night knowing that she was directly responsible for killing a person. And it breaks my heart and it makes me sad. And Radonda, if you're listening to this, I hope that you do go on a speaking circuit and show people how easily it could have been them, and help improve patient safety in this country, because you have direct knowledge of things that could have helped you in this situation, and it would help other people and prevent other unnecessary deaths from occurring. So if you have any questions regarding this matter, please post in the comments below. And if you have any other questions for Ask a Nurse Attorney, go to allnurses.com and post your question. I'd love to be there to answer it and to help you. Until next time, happy nursing.